process of valuation. How do we do the valuation? What are the steps involved in case of valuation? So tomorrow, if you are approached by a client and the client is asking you to do the valuation of a company for the purpose of IPO, or a client is asking to do the valuation of the company for the purpose of compliance, or the client is asking to do the valuation for the purpose of financial reporting, or the client is asking you to do the valuation of his business for the purpose of family arrangement. So there are different situations for which the valuation may be required. What is the process for valuation of different kinds of assets under different situations? Let us understand that step by step. So the first step in the context of valuation process is understanding the purpose of valuation. So सबसे पहले हमको क्या समझना है? सबसे पहले हमको समझना है कि valuation का purpose क्या है, because जो valuation का purpose है उस पर depend करेगा कि valuation की premise क्या होगी. So say for example, a business can be valued as a going concern. So you are there is someone who has a factory in India with a turnover of 500 crore. His children are settled in US, and his children are asking this gentleman to sell the business here in India and join the children in US. And this gentleman also decides to sell off his business and go to US, spend time with the children. Now, when this business is to be sold, it's a running business, it's making profit. So if this business has to be sold, it has to be sold as a going concern, right? Because it's a running company. Likewise, there is another company. This company, the financial creditors of this company, or the operational creditors of this company filed an application with the NCLT under Section 7 or under Section 9. And the NCLT initiated the process of CIRP. Unfortunately, even after the process of CIRP, this company could not be revived, and therefore now this company has to go in for liquidation. So now when this company is going in for liquidation, valuation of this company will not be as a going concern, rather the valuation of this company will be on the premises of liquidation. Right? So that is what we need to understand in the first place, कि जो हम valuation का assignment है, या जिस company का हमें valuation करना है, या जिस asset का हमें valuation करना है, उसका purpose क्या है. Because purpose पे depend करेगा कि उसकी premise क्या होगी. Right? So first step, understanding the purpose for which the valuation is to be done. Based on the purpose, you will decide the premise of valuation. And let me tell you friends, there are only two premises. So broadly, virtually, there are only two premises for the valuation. Premise का मतलब क्या है? Premise का मतलब है कि किस basis पे आप इसका valuation कर रहे हो. तो there are only two premises. Premise number one is going concern, and premise number two is liquidation. So that is the step number 2. Identifying the premise of valuation. कि किस basis पर आपको उसका valuation करना है. You want to value this company as a running company, or you want to value this company as a going concern. I'm sure a question must be coming into your mind as to how does it matter whether a company is to be valued as a going concern, or if a company has to be valued on the liquidation premise. It will matter. How it will matter? It will matter because depending on what is the premise of the valuation, the approach of the valuation will undergo a change. For example, in case if a business is to be valued as a going concern, then it will have to be valued using either the income approach or the market approach, or maybe combination of two. So अगर कोई कंपनी है, रनिंग कंपनी है, प्रॉफिट मेकिंग कंपनी है, कंपनी चल रही है, आगे भी चलती रहने वाली है, गोइंग कंसर्न है, तो उसका जो वैल्यूएशन आप करेंगे तो उसके लिए कौन सी अप्रोच यूज़ करेंगे, कौन सा मेथड यूज़ करेंगे, उसके लिए आप अप्रोच यूज़ करेंगे आइदर यू विल यूज़ द इनकम अप्रोच or you will use the market approach, or you will use combination of the two. But if a company is going in for liquidation, then what approach will you use for the valuation of this company? You will use the asset approach or the cost approach for the valuation of this company, as we discussed little while ago. क्यों कंपनी बंद होने वाली है? अब कंपनी बंद होने वाली है, इसका मतलब है कि चलने वाली नहीं है। चलने वाली नहीं है इसका मतलब प्रॉफिट नहीं कमाएगी। प्रॉफिट नहीं कमाएगी इसका मतलब कैश फ्लो नहीं होगा। कैश फ्लो नहीं होगा इसका मतलब इनकम अप्रोच नहीं यूज कर सकते। तो क्या यूज करेंगे? एसेट अप्रोच यूज करेंगे। एसेट अप्रोच यूज करेंगे, जिसको कि हम कॉस्ट अप्रोच भी कहते हैं। सो दैट्स योर स्टेप नंबर 3, दैट इज आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ प्रीमाइस. Now then the third step is determining the standard of value. Standard of value. Now what is the meaning of standard of value? The meaning of standard of value is कि क्या पैरामीटर है। जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना standard is what? Standard is a tool to measure actual situation with a prefixed norm. That is what is standard. What is standard? Standard is a prefixed norm that you use for the purpose of benchmarking. So you will need to determine the standard of value based on the purpose and based on the premise. So what are the standards of value? Please pay attention. The first standard of value is fair value. First standard of value is fair value. And now what is fair value? It's very simple. Fair value, as the name suggests, a value which is fair to both the parties, and that is fair value. Now what is the meaning of this fair value? How can a value be fair to both the parties? Yes, it can be fair to both the parties. How will it be fair to both the parties? So when a value is arrived between two willing buyer and seller, where neither of the party is under any kind of coercion or any kind of pressure, and where the transaction is being done at arm's length, that means there is no other consideration other than the exchange of the asset and the money. Now this is your fair value. So, and both the parties are well aware of the asset which is being sold or bought. So that is your fair value. Now let me give you an example. So let's say, for example, me, myself and Prasanna ji. Now Prasanna ji has a car to sell, second-hand car to sell, and he is looking for a customer. So he speaks to me and he tells me that I have a car to sell, second-hand car. Will you be interested in buying it? So I said, yes, of course, I am looking for a second-hand car for my wife. So I will be interested in buying your second-hand car. So Prasanna ji says, all right, please come to my place. You can have a look at your car, look at the car, and then we can decide the price. And he also tells me, in case if you want, you can bring a mechanic also. So the mechanic would be able to tell us as to what is the condition of the car. So both of us decide a time, and I go to his house and meet him, and also take a mechanic with me. Mechanic examines the car and he tells me privately, sir, you can buy this car for 200,000 rupees. So I listen to him, and then I tell Prasanna ji, your car is good, and I am willing to buy this car, but the maximum that I can pay for this car is 1,80,000. Prasanna ji also had some figure in his mind, and he says, no, 1,80,000 is far too less. At the most, I can sell it for 1,90,000. So between two of us, we agree for a price of 1,90,000. I pay him 1,90,000. He gives me car, and the deal is done. Now this is fair value. So when the valuation is being done between two willing parties, it is fair value. Now what is fair market value? So when you bring market in picture for determination of the price, it becomes a fair market value. Meaning what? Meaning Prasanna ji, instead of selling the car to me, instead of talking to me about the car, now what he does, he registers his car on OLX or on Car Dekho or on Spinny. He puts all the details of his car, and based on the details that he puts into the portal of or OLX or Car Dekho or Spinny, a lot of people all over the country who are wanting to buy this kind of car, they bid for that car, and collectively a price emerges which is 2,20,000. Now 2,20,000 becomes fair market value. So what is the difference between the fair value and the fair market value? The difference between the fair value and the fair market value, when the price is determined between the two willing buyer and seller, it is a fair value. When you have market coming in the picture, it becomes a fair market value. So when we are buying and selling shares on the stock market through any of the portal of Zerodha or ICICI Securities or Kotak Securities, the price at which we are able to buy or sell those shares are driven or decided by the market, and that is why those are referred as fair market value. So that is the difference between the fair value and the fair market value. Then you have something which is known as intrinsic value. Now what is intrinsic value? So a lot of people have a lot of answers to give when it comes to what is intrinsic value. So most people would say intrinsic value would mean something which is internal. Now let me tell you, intrinsic value is very simple. Intrinsic value, most people think is subjective, where the fact of life is intrinsic value is most objective value. So what is intrinsic value? Intrinsic value is nothing but present value of all future cash flows of an asset. That is the intrinsic value. That is the intrinsic value. So intrinsic value is nothing but total of present value of all future cash flows is intrinsic value. Then you have something which is known as specific value. Now what is a specific value? Specific value is when you are trying to deal in an asset, it is quite possible that a particular asset may have a special purpose to be served for a particular buyer. So that particular buyer will be prepared to pay you a price which is different what you will get it otherwise, and that is your specific value. That is your specific value. Say for example, now you want to sell your flat where you are staying today because you are migrating to some other place. When you want to sell this flat, remember your neighbor will always be willing to pay you little premium over and above the price that will be offered by anyone else from outside, and that is the specific value. So your neighbor has a specific value for this flat of yours. Why? Because it is adjoining flat. So if he buys your flat, he will be able to make a combination. He will be able to combine both the flats, and that's your specific value. That's your specific value. So that's the fourth standard. And fifth is synergistic value. And what is synergistic value? Synergistic value is 1 plus 1 is not equal to 2. 1 plus 1 is equal to 11. And that is the synergistic value. So when company X and company Y merge together, the combined value of both these merged company will always be higher than the aggregate of individual values of these two companies, and that is your synergistic value. So friends, these are the 5 standards of value. Number 1, it is a fair value. Number 2, it is the fair market value. Number 3, it is the intrinsic value. Number 4, it is the specific value. And number 5, it is the synergistic value. And that is what you will need to determine based on the situation, right? तो क्या चीज़ को आप सेल कर रहे हो उस पर डिपेंड करेगा कि आपकी क्या प्राइस होगी, उस पर डिपेंड करेगा कि आप कौन सा वैल्यूएशन का वैल्यू स्टैंडर्ड standard of value you will use. Now, the fourth step is EIC analysis. As I said little while ago, मैंने वो EIC एनालिसिस का थोड़ा इसको बड़ा कर दिया और उसको मैंने GEIC एनालिसिस कर दिया. दैट मीन्स व्हाट? दैट मीन्स कल जब आप वैल्यूएशन प्रोफेशनल बनने के बाद किसी कंपनी का वैल्यूएशन करेंगे तो आपको बहुत सारे फैक्टर्स को कंसिडर करना पड़ेगा.